When I was a little girl, my dad was a truck driver. Anytime he would get a new truck, you better bet I was in the damn thing jumping on the little bed. Not only did he get new trucks often, we got new homes as well. We lived all across the country within the span of 4 years. This story happened in Alabama. One of the things that sucked about moving all the time was that I couldn't hold friendships. I was probably in a school for at most 6 months before we would pack up and move again. It caused me to have a bit of social anxiety, not wanting to make new friends in fear of losing them in the months to come. So when I started at my new school in Alabama, the kids didn't take to me very well. A couple of months in, still no friends, but I did have a crush on a boy named Bobby. Bobby was in Little League, and he had dark short hair with eyes to match. I always thought about asking to play with him and his friends at recess, but decided against it. That changed though. Bobby came up to me during recess one afternoon, with a couple of his friends trailing behind him. "Hey, new girl, have you heard the story about the bridge? If I may, I need to tell you the layout of the schoolyard." The school was located on a little hill with a massive field in front. In the corner of the field, a little square of land had been cemented for the playground. At the far end of the field, there was a fence. On the other side of the fence, there was a creek with a little bridge crossing it, leading to a local park. Of course I heard about the bridge. I lied. I hadn't heard anything about it. I just didn't want to look stupid in front of the cutest boy in school. "So did you talk to her then?" Bobby smirked, with his little friends snickering behind him. "Talk to who?" I asked, becoming curious and nervous. "The little girl. I knew you lied. A long time ago there was a girl that went to this school. She climbed that fence over there while playing hide and seek and fell in the creek. Her feet got tangled in the mud and weeds underwater, and she drowned. If you go over to the bridge and ask her to play with you, you'll see her ghost." Bobby stared at me the whole time he was speaking, looking to see my reaction. I thought he was just trying to scare me. I began walking to the fence. Bobby chased after me, asking what I was doing. "I'm going to ask her to play. What's it look like?" I climbed the fence and walked over to the bridge. It creaked with every step I took. There were no railings. I stood in the middle of the bridge and peered down into the water. There was a nasty brown tint, with random plants piercing through. Out of nowhere, I felt a rush of adrenaline and dread wash over me. I was scared. It was too late for me to back out now. Cutie boy was staring at me from behind the fence. Maybe if I did this, he would want to be my friend. I cleared my throat and licked my lips. When did my mouth become so dry? Little girl, do you want to play?" I tensed up, waiting for a blue and green decomposed corpse to rise from the waters and scare the shit out of me. Nothing happened. I looked at Bobby. Did I say that right? Bobby tore his eyes away from the water, and his expression changed. "Probably not. You're stupid." With that said, he and his friends trotted off with laughter. I felt humiliated. I looked to the water one more time, before hopping over the fence again. The current picked up. That night, I had a very vivid dream. In my dream, I was sitting on a log in the field of the school, when 2 Dobermans came out of the distance and charged at me. I jumped up and ran over to the fence, clumsily trying to jump it. When I got to the other side, the dogs halted their charge. They were standing 10 feet away from the fence, as still as statues. I couldn't even tell if they were breathing. I turned around and realized I had already walked onto the bridge. Freaking out, I began to walk off of it, but it began to shake. Frozen in fear, I dropped to my knees and began to crawl when I saw it. There was a figure in my peripheral vision, standing to the right of me. "I found you," it said before I woke myself up. I was sweating. Could that have been her? Was that her way of showing herself to me? No, it was a nightmare. That's all it could have been. I didn't realize that that was a warning. The next day, Bobby wasn't in school. Apparently, he sprained his ankle during Little League practice. I was hoping he would talk to me, but it looked like that wasn't going to happen today. During recess, all I could think about was that dream. I was comparing the real-world details of the field to the details of my dream, and it was pretty spot on. I looked around, making sure no teachers or students were watching me. I made my way to the fence and hopped over. I slowly walked to the bridge. I was looking at every little detail of the wood when I noticed a little hole. I got on all fours and looked through it. I could see right through to the creek. I pressed my right cheek to the bridge to try and get a better view through the hole, when something cold and windy grazed my eye. I quickly sat up and cupped my hand to my face. It felt as if someone had blown into my eye very harshly, like a gust of wind. I rubbed my eye for a few seconds and let my vision recover. I stood up to walk back to the field, but I stopped. I had the urge to look down. The feeling of dread swept over me again. A little finger was wiggling in the hole. It stopped and pointed at me. It was a very pale bluish tint. The finger looked saggy and soggy. I couldn't look away. I was entranced by fear. I heard a very faint noise. It almost sounded like somebody talking, but with the volume turned way down. I stepped back really slowly, keeping my eye on the finger that was still pointing directly at me. Once I got onto the grass, I got back down on all fours and tried to glance under the bridge. I heard the noises again, but this time I could tell they were words being whispered. I peeked under the bridge. I saw her face. She was standing beneath the bridge, head cocked to the side to look at me on the grass. All the while, her little finger still in the hole, pointing at me. Her pale eyes stared right through me, with her stringy, damp hair clinging to the soggy skin on her face and neck. The quiet voice was coming from her. "I found you." I jumped to my feet and threw my body over the fence, crashing onto the grass, knocking the wind out of me. I began crying uncontrollably. A teacher ran over to me and asked what was wrong. Through my tears, I just told her I fell on my arm. I couldn't tell her what I did, what I saw. She put her hands on my shoulders to guide me to the nurse's office. I looked back one time. I regret it. Through the fence and in the creek, I saw her head. She was watching me. After that day, I didn't go out to recess. I faked an asthma attack a few times, and they let me stay inside. A month after the incident, we ended up moving to Florida. For nights on end, when I would fall asleep, my dreams would start off in that field. This experience truly messed me up.
I have this amazing girlfriend that makes me feel like the luckiest girl in the world. We're constantly fawning over each other, but I want to help her with a possible demon haunting her. She always sleeps a lot at my house, since her nights are plagued by nightmares, strange noises, and sometimes visions. Many times she's called me on Skype in tears from hearing something walking around her hallway and scratching and banging her door. Sometimes she hears screams. Another time she heard her adopted dad trying to call her down to the basement, though he was in a different state at the time and really doesn't even talk to her. Both her sister and brother have seen it. A room in their house at the bottom of their stairs is a spot where they all have seen it. They tend to cover their eyes when walking past. Every 3 months, my girlfriend has the same nightmare about a terrifying figure. She sometimes gets sleep paralysis. There might be more, but she's currently asleep. I'll try to update this with whatever additional things she tells me. Please, can someone give me advice to help her? Update 1. She remembers something today while we were talking, how she hid under the bed. It surfaced as a kid. She hid under the bed and made a fake body pillow. The kind of thing teens do when sneaking out, but the covers were pulled and she heard an angry growl. She told me she stayed there all night. She was so scared. Update 2. She's with me right now. I'm recording what she's saying. These are just some of the stories she can remember. Story 1. She was 6. She shared a room with her sister, had a mirror in their room. Her sister saw it first and woke her up. It was a reflection of a 7 to 6 foot tall outline of a man with red eyes pounding on the air to get in. They both awoke and it screamed. She says it was like hundreds of voices in one. Her sister threw something at the mirror to shatter it and it seemed to go away. Story 2. She was in her bed and heard a noise, saw a long figure. Think of the Grinch, but black, that slipped under the door. She hid under her covers for around 3 to 4 minutes, had this weird sensation of spinning. When she peeked out, she was on the floor, spinning and screamed. Panicked, it stopped when her parents rushed in. Story 3. She was walking back up the stairs and saw a shadow of a man, sort of like the other story. She froze and just started staring at it, dropped the glass of water she was holding and shrieked, so her parents ran up. Story 4. She used to see a light figure at the foot of her bed when her and her sister shared a bedroom. The bed started shaking when she noticed it. Update 3. Okay, she just told me this last night, but her mom was a hardcore Satanist. She never really thought about it, but this stuff had been going on since she was a kid. I think this plays a huge role in the haunting. She also stumbled across a shell, some sage at the festival we went to, and even got it blessed. Does anyone have tips for using it?
Okay, so I was very young when this happened. Probably between the age of 7 to 10 years old. But I remember it vividly, and it kind of freaks me out anytime I talk about it. My dad lived in a very old house, probably built in the early 1900s. It was a duplex, so it was split into 2 different apartments. When you walked in the front door, the living room was right there, and if you walked through the living room, you'd get into the kitchen. This apartment was 1 floor, so my dad's bedroom was right next to the living room. I love horror video games and horror movies. I remember playing and watching them in the living room all the time when it was dark. I vividly remember always seeing an old woman in the kitchen anytime it was super dark. The old woman was black and white. She was staring at the ceiling and had her hair in a bun. I always kind of brushed it off. I thought maybe I was just seeing things because of the scary games I was playing. I would see the old woman in the kitchen from time to time, even when I was just watching TV or cartoons. So one day, I asked my twin, who was always with me in the living room watching TV, if she happened to see an old woman in the kitchen. She told me yes. I asked her to describe her. She said, looking up at the ceiling with a bun in her hair. After hearing that, I knew I wasn't hallucinating. I was scared because anytime I'd look into my dark kitchen, there the lady was. Not moving, just staring into the ceiling. One day I decided I was going to keep staring and see if she disappears. So I stared for about 2 minutes, and it looked like she was turning her head towards me. When that happened, I screamed for my dad to come out and look in the kitchen to see who was in there. He went into the kitchen and turned on the lights and told me, "No one's in here." I was so scared. I know what I saw. My dad told me I was probably just seeing things because it was dark. I know I was young when this happened, but I've never been able to get that out of my head. After that night, when I saw her turning her head towards me, I never saw her again. My dad moved out of there a few years later, but I still believe it was some kind of woman who lived there previously. It was just too weird that my twin described the same exact woman as me.
Okay, so I feel like writing, so I'll share one. Not long ago, I had a large second floor apartment in the middle of town. I had the whole place to myself, little over a year, loved bedtime, had a minimalist ritual before I crawled into my enormous queen-size bed that consisted of filling a fresh glass of water, smoking a little Dreamtime supplement, and occasionally a little light reading. Upon closing my paperback late one night, I swung my legs from under the covers and over the bed as I reached for the light. My mouth was half open, and in the near total quiet of my bedroom, I heard a small hiss and felt something spray the back of my throat. I shit you not, I sat right up and swallowed hard. Not sensing any foreign object in my mouth, I'm in total what the fuck mode. The light is still on, and I'm sitting bolt right up trying to fathom what in the double hockey sticks just happened to me, when a sensation began to take place in my throat. At first it was a tickle, but quickly grew intense. I was in mid-state of shock as my throat began to burn, and increased in intensity by the second. Within less than a minute, my mind was racing, and I began to question whether I should call an emergency number. I ran to the toilet and crouched on all fours with my neck extended over the toilet. Don't ask me why, but at the moment this action seemed prudent. My breathing became constricted as I hoovered over the bowl. It's times like this when one realizes they need to do more of a thorough job of scrubbing the toilet. I digress. I knelt there, unable to move or think of anything other than my sudden alarming predicament. Is this how my body would be found? Is this karmatic payback for all the ignorant things I've done? If I call an ambulance, will they make it before I pass out? This pattern of trying to remain calm while being peppered internally with flashes of panic went on for some 15 minutes. I held off calling for help and kept myself together long enough to feel a faint twinge of hope as my breathing gradually began to improve. Eventually I made my way back to the bed, having decided to fully ride it out. I slept with the lights on. I was 36. I still have no answers and doubt I ever will. Sprayed in the throat by unseen thing, held my head in the toilet, fearing for my life as my air passage constricted from mysterious hot pepper sensation.
Hey guys and ladies, thanks for watching. If you want me to tell your story or read a creepypasta, email me at the address in the description. I want to thank Hitch Hiker for working with me. Go check out his channel. I put a link in the description. Be good to animals, even people. See ya!
Scout, Snamok, Barksbus, Herish.
Let's do it. Dun 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 dun.